My dad called during my daughter's birthday party from his military base in Kuwait and asked what she bought with the $500 he'd been sending every single month for 2 years. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while I was trying to fix a streamer that kept falling off the cabinet. I'd taped it 4 times already. Dollar store tape, dollar store streamers. The whole thing was held together with desperation and good lighting, and I knew it, and I was okay with that because Lily was turning 6 and she didn't know the difference yet. I saw the number and grabbed it fast. Kuwait. My chest did that thing it always does when dad calls from overseas, that 5-second clench while you wait to hear his voice and confirm he's still okay. There she is, he said. His face filled the screen. Tan. A little tired around the eyes the way he always looks after 6 months of desert shifts, but smiling. Genuinely smiling, the way he only does when he's looking at me or the kids. Happy birthday to my girl's girl. Where's Lily? Backyard, I said. She's got 8 of her kindergarten friends out there destroying everything I set up this morning. Hold on. I walked to the back door and held the phone up, and there was Lily in her pink birthday dress, shrieking, running, completely lost in something only 6-year-olds can access. Pure noise, pure happiness. Dad laughed, that full chest laugh I grew up hearing. God, she's getting big, he said. Then something in his voice shifted. Not much, just enough. Hey Kayla, real quick, I want to know what she picked out for her birthday. I stepped back into the kitchen. Picked out? Yeah, with the money, the $500, I figured she probably had a running list. Kids always do. I laughed, but it was the wrong kind of laugh. The kind that happens when your brain tries to buy itself a second to understand what it's hearing. Dad, what are you talking about? He looked at me through the screen. The $500 I sent this month, same as every month. He paused. Kayla. Dad, I didn't get any. I've been sending $500 every single month, he said, for 2 years. The kitchen went quiet. Not actually quiet. I could still hear the kids outside, hear the music I'd set up on the portable speaker, hear Derek moving around somewhere behind me. But inside my own head, there was suddenly nothing. Just that number sitting there. 2 years. Every month. That's $12,000. Dad held up a folder to the camera. A real folder. Thick. The kind he keeps physical records in because he doesn't trust digital paperwork. He was flipping pages toward the screen. Bank receipts. Wire transfers. Routing numbers highlighted in yellow. Routing number ending in 4782, he said. His voice had gone somewhere I'd never heard it go before. Somewhere low and controlled and absolutely certain. My stomach dropped so hard I grabbed the edge of the counter. That was Derek's account. The separate one. The one he'd set up 3 years ago and told me was for work expenses. Subcontractor invoices, he'd said. Easier to keep separate. I'd nodded. I hadn't asked again. That was my mistake. My real one. I turned around slowly. Derek was standing at the far end of the counter. He had his coffee mug in his hand but wasn't drinking it. He was just standing there watching me, and his face had gone the color of old newspaper. His hands were shaking. The coffee was sloshing. A little spilled over the edge and hit the tile, and neither of us looked at it. 24 months, I said. I wasn't yelling. I was very, very calm. That scared me more than anything else. My brain was already doing the math. Couldn't stop it. Didn't want to. $500 times 24 months. The mortgage payment we'd scrambled for in October. The grocery runs where I'd stood in the aisle doing price per ounce math on canned beans. The school supply list I'd photographed and then combed through twice to figure out what was really necessary and what Lily's teacher might have extra of. The field trips my kids had missed because I couldn't swing the $30 fee. The shoes. Lily's left shoe had a crack in the sole I'd sealed with a hot glue gun and prayed held until the next paycheck. That's where $12,000 went. Into things that should have been fine and weren't. I'm sending half my contractor pay, Dad said through the phone. His voice was cracking now. Just slightly. Just around the edges. So my grandchildren don't go without while I'm sitting in a barracks in Kuwait. Lily's laughter drifted in from the backyard. That sound broke something open in me. Something that had been holding for a long time. You need to understand what the 2 years before that phone call looked like. I was 31. Derek was 34. We'd been married for 8 years, together for 10. We had Lily and her younger brother Mason, who was 4. We lived in a 3-bedroom rental in Glenside, Pennsylvania, 20 minutes outside Philadelphia, in a house that was fine when we moved in and had slowly accumulated small problems we couldn't afford to fix. The dishwasher ran loud. One of the bathroom faucets dripped. The back step had a soft spot in the middle that I'd gotten good at stepping around. Derek worked in logistics, regional supply chain coordination for a mid-sized distributor out of Delaware. It was a real job with real pay, $48,000 a year, plus occasional project bonuses. I'd been doing DoorDash 3 nights a week to supplement while I built a freelance bookkeeping side business. We weren't rich. We weren't destitute, or so I thought. Dad had been in Kuwait since January of the previous year. Private contractor work, logistics, and security consulting for a defense company. Good money. Better than good. He'd always been the kind of man who kept his own financial life quiet, but showed up when it mattered. When I was in college and my car died, he'd transferred money without being asked and told me to pay him back when I could, and then never mentioned it again. That was his way. He didn't make a production of it, which is exactly why he'd never told me about the monthly transfers. He'd set them up, I later found out, because Derek had called him in March, 2 months after Dad deployed to Kuwait, and told him I was struggling, that I was too proud to ask for help, that the kids needed things, that money was tight. He'd framed it carefully, Derek had, thoughtfully. He'd said he was worried about me and the kids. He'd said my dad was the only one who could really make a difference, and that it it would mean so much to all of us. He'd called my father, who was sitting in a barracks 10 time zones away and couldn't come home to check for himself, and told him a story designed to loosen his wallet. The routing number Derek gave Dad was his separate account, the one I never touched. I didn't know about any of it until Lily's 6th birthday, until the phone call, until the folder pressed up to the camera. What I knew in the 2 years before that call was this. I knew Derek had started driving to work instead of taking the train sometime in early spring. He said gas was cheaper than expected. I didn't push it. I knew he'd started keeping his phone face down on counters and tables, a habit that appeared gradually enough that I'd filed it as something people do now. Privacy. Everyone's more private about their phones. I knew he'd missed Lily's soccer games in July and August, citing traffic, citing late meetings, citing the general unpredictability of a job that sometimes demanded unplanned hours. I knew that there was a night in September when I'd reached for his hand in bed, and he'd been stiff in a way I hadn't felt before. Not cold exactly, just absent, like part of him wasn't there. I'd thought he was stressed about work. I'd made him tea in the morning and not said anything because I was trying to be the kind of wife who gives space. I didn't know he had a gambling problem. I'd later find out it had started sometime in year 7 of our marriage. Casinos first, then sports betting, then the kind of things that happen when a person decides they can get it back if they just keep going. He'd burned through his savings first, then some credit cards he'd opened without telling me. Then he'd needed something else, something sustainable, something that looked legitimate. He'd found my father's phone number in my contacts while I was in the shower one morning, and he'd called. "Show me where the $12,000 went," I said. "Right now, show me." Derek didn't move for a long moment. He looked at the phone in my hand, at my dad's face still visible on the screen, and then he looked at me with an expression I can only describe as the look of a man who knows the next few minutes are going to change everything and is still calculating whether there's a way out. There wasn't. He unlocked his phone. He handed it to me. The account. Clean, on the surface, until you looked at the line items. Dad's deposits were there every month, regular as sunrise, coming in from Kuwait under a company name I didn't recognize at first. A contractor routing that Dad had set up to keep things discreet. And then the withdrawals. ATM withdrawal, Valley Forge Casino Resort, $200. ATM withdrawal, Valley Forge Casino Resort, $300. ATM withdrawal, Parks Casino, $500. Month after month, sometimes in one lump, sometimes broken up over a week. The names of the casinos rotated. Valley Forge, Parx, Sugar House downtown. But the pattern was identical. Money in from Kuwait. Money out to slot machines and card tables and whatever else happens in those places at noon on a Tuesday when everyone else is at work. I scrolled without speaking for a long time. July 15th, I said finally. My voice was shaking now, just slightly. "That was Lily's first soccer game. She scored. You missed it. You said there was an accident on 76. I kept scrolling. July 15th, 3 ATM withdrawals. Parx Casino, $400. He said nothing. August 3rd, her dance recital, first one. She'd been practicing for 2 months. She wore the little blue costume. I sat alone and told the mom next to me you were stuck at work, and she gave me that look. I found the entry. August 3rd, Valley Forge, $250. Kayla! October 9th. My voice cracked. I pressed through it. Mason's well-child appointment. You said you'd come. He was scared to get his shots. He kept asking where Daddy was. I told him you were helping people. The entry was there. It was always there. Parks Casino, $300. Derek sat down on the floor. Not on a chair. On the floor. Like his legs just stopped working. My dad's voice came through the phone. Quiet. Precise. Derek? He got the name right this time. He'd said Michael before, and it had been the most unsettling thing I'd ever heard. My father forgetting the name of the man his daughter married, the name of the man raising his grandchildren. He got it right now. Derek, did my granddaughter eat ramen on her birthday while you had my money in your pocket? Derek could not look at the screen. I have a problem, he said to the floor. I know I have a problem. Yes, I said. You do. But even as I said it, the Christmas memory was already arriving. I hadn't asked it to. It just came. Last December, Lily was 5, Mason was 3. We'd had maybe $60 in the shared checking account by December 20th after rent and utilities. I'd gone to $3 stores and the Goodwill on Cheltenham Avenue, and I'd spent 4 hours making things look like enough. I'd wrapped everything in the nicest paper I could find, reused bows from the year before, stayed up until 2 a.m., making sure it looked abundant from a distance. I'd told the kids Santa was having a tough year, economic pressures, supply chain stuff. I'd used those words because I didn't have better ones. Lily had cried. Not a tantrum cry, the quiet kind. She'd sat at the kitchen table on Christmas morning after everything was opened, and she'd asked me if she'd been bad. Not bratty bad, bad bad. Did I do something wrong bad? I told her no, absolutely not. Santa loves her. She'd nodded in the way that kids nod when they don't believe you, but they're trying to. 3 days later, I found a piece of notebook paper on her dresser. She'd made a list, in her 6-year-old handwriting, ways to be better so Santa would love her next time. She was 5 years old. She had written, be nicer to Mason, eat vegetables, don't complain, help mommy more. My daughter had composed a self-improvement list because she believed, because we had let her believe, because Derek had stolen the money that would have prevented it, that the emptiness under the Christmas tree was something she had earned. You had a $1,000 between November and December, I said. I was no longer shaking. I was something past shaking, something that had burned through shaking and come out the other side. While she made a list, while she spent the whole next year trying to be better enough for Santa to love her. She was 5 years old and she thought she wasn't good enough. And you had $1,000 $100 in your pocket. Derek opened his mouth. Don't, I said. I'm getting on the next flight home, Dad said. Emergency leave. I've already started the process. Derek, I've called a forensic accountant, a friend of mine. He's going to go through 24 months of those transfers. Everyone, you need to think very carefully about what you do in the next 48 hours. He hung up. The kitchen was silent except for the birthday music still playing outside. Derek looked up at me from the floor, and something crossed his face. Something that moved through whatever genuine remorse had been there and into something else. Something harder. Something calculating. I'd been married to this man for 8 years, and I saw a version of his face in that moment that I had never seen before. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was fear dressed up as aggression. He stood up slowly. He took one step toward me. I slid my hand under the lip of the counter, where my phone was still sitting, and I started typing without looking down. 3 words to my neighbor Carol, who had a key to my house, whose husband was a retired police officer who lived 40 feet away. Come over now. I hit send without looking, because I had been married to Derek for 8 years, and I thought I knew every version of him. But the man standing across that kitchen from me right now was not a version I recognized. And I was alone in that house except for 8 kindergartners playing in the backyard and a 4-year-old who didn't understand what was happening. I was not going to be wrong about this. Carol was at my back door in 4 minutes. I know because I counted. I stood at the kitchen counter and I kept my voice level, and I said, "We need to talk about this properly. Not right now. Not today. The kids are here." And Derek looked at Carol's face in the doorway, and whatever he'd been about to do or say, whatever version of control he'd been reaching for, he let it go. He picked up his keys. He left. Carol stood in my kitchen and watched his car back out of the driveway, and then she looked at me and said, "Do you want me to get the kids inside, or do you want to talk first?" "Kids," I said. "Please, get the kids." She did. All 8 kindergartners herded inside with the promise of extra birthday cake. Lily didn't notice anything was wrong. She was 6. The world was still fundamentally safe and full of birthday cake, and she had no reason to think otherwise, and I was going to protect that for as long as I humanly could. I sat down at my kitchen table for the first time in hours. I didn't cry. Not yet. I called my sister Renee in Maryland. Then I called my mother, who I knew would call Derek's mother within the hour, because that's how our families worked, whether I wanted it to or not. Then I sat very still and let the reality of $12,000 settle into my body like something physical. Like weight. Dad landed at Philadelphia International Airport 31 hours later. He walked through my front door with a duffel bag and a folder thicker than the one he'd held up to the camera, and he hugged me for a long time without saying anything. He smelled like airplane and desert and Old Spice. He held on until I let go. Then he sat at my kitchen table and spread out what he had. 24 wire transfer receipts, a spreadsheet the forensic accountant had already started building, a legal pad with dates and amounts and the names of 3 casinos cross-referenced against Derek's withdrawal records. "Here's what I know," Dad said. "He got the money, every dollar of it. Nothing went to you or the kids. The account has a current balance of $214. $214, I repeated. "He was probably playing both sides," Dad said, "gambling his own paycheck too, using mine to refill when he went bust, which means his paycheck is also gone," I finished. Dad nodded. I'd had a vague intuition about this, but I hadn't let myself follow it all the way. Now I did. Derek's $48,000 salary, minus taxes, minus the portions he'd been able to hide the disappearance of by blaming expenses and timing. How much of that had also gone into those ATM machines? More than I wanted to calculate that night. "I need to know about our joint accounts," I said. "I know," Dad said. "Tomorrow morning, you and I are going to the bank first thing." We went the next morning. The joint checking account had $842 in it. The joint savings account, which was supposed to have a $4,000 emergency fund that we'd been building for 3 years, had $311. The savings account had been emptied and partially refilled repeatedly. Small amounts, enough to keep me from noticing if I wasn't looking closely. Derek had counted on the fact that I was busy and tired and trusting, and none of those things were character flaws I deserved to be punished for, but they had been counted on nonetheless. Dad sat beside me in that bank chair and did not say "I told you so." He never had anything like that in him. He just kept his jaw tight and handed me a tissue when the banker stepped away to print something and said, "We'll fix this." "You can't fix this," I said. Dad, this is not fixable with money." "No," he agreed, "but we can start with money." I filed for divorce 12 days after the birthday party. My sister Renee recommended the attorney, a woman named Patricia Cho, who ran a small practice out of Jenkintown and who had a gift for being simultaneously the warmest and most precise person in a room. I liked her immediately. She did not waste time. Derek contested nothing at first. He came to the first meeting with his own attorney looking like a man who had not slept properly in a week, which was accurate. He'd been staying at his brother's apartment in Norristown. His brother, to his credit, had called me the week after the birthday party and said, "I'm sorry. I had no idea. I want you to know I didn't know." I believed him. The forensic accountant finished his report 3 weeks after Dad returned from Kuwait. The full picture was worse than I'd expected and better than my worst fears. Derek had lost, between his salary and my father's transfers, approximately $67,000 over 2.5 years. Gambling losses, a small amount to what looked like loan shark adjacent repayments. A credit card in his name alone that was maxed at $8,500. He had not spent any of it on another person. There was no affair hidden inside the financial wreckage. I'm not sure if that made it better or worse, it was just gone. Disappeared into machines that blinked and flashed and took everything and gave nothing back. The divorce was finalized 7 months after Lily's birthday. What I remember most about those 7 months is not the legal maneuvering, though there was plenty of that. It's not Derek's final desperate gambit, a letter he sent through his attorney in month 4 claiming that my father's transfers constituted gifts to our marital estate and therefore should be split in the divorce. Patricia Cho's response to that was 4 pages long and surgical in a way that made me feel, for the first time, something close to satisfaction. What I remember most is a Tuesday night in October, 2 months after the birthday party, when Lily and Mason were in bed and Dad was still in town, staying in the spare room, and I was sitting at the kitchen table with the overhead light on and a cup of tea I'd forgotten to drink. Dad came downstairs for water. He saw me sitting there. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just sat down across from me. We sat there for a while without talking. I should have known, I said eventually. How? He said. I don't know. Something. Kayla. He put his hands flat on the table. He called me from your house. He used your contact information to reach me. He built a lie that was specifically designed to hide in your trust. You didn't miss a warning sign. He engineered the absence of one. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't. Completely. There's a part of me that will always sift through those 8 years looking for the thing I missed. The day I should have asked a different question. The night I should have looked at the bank statement more carefully. That part doesn't shut off. It might never. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal at this level. It doesn't turn you into a victim cleanly. It turns you into a detective of your own past, picking through everything for evidence you didn't know to look for. What I did miss, and I say this without self-cruelty, just accuracy, was that I had stopped asking questions. Not out of laziness, out of love, out of the belief that trust was something you maintained by extending it. Maybe that's always the gamble at the center of marriage. You cannot protect yourself completely and also be fully present in a life with someone. You have to choose every day how much wall to keep up. I kept too few walls up. Derek kept too many. Lily is 9 now. She does not remember the dollar store streamers from her 6th birthday. Children process the surface of things mostly. She remembers the cake and her friends and the pink dress and that Grandpa came home from far away and was there for a while. Mason is 7 and he's obsessed with Lego and doesn't remember much of anything from that period at all, which is a mercy I am genuinely grateful for. Dad extended his Kuwait contract by 6 months and sent the money directly to me after that. Not as a correction or a statement, just because that was always what he'd wanted, to take care of us from far away because he couldn't be here. He came home for good 8 months ago. He's renting a place in Ambler, 20 minutes away. He comes for dinner on Sundays. He coaches Mason's Little League team in a way that is extremely invested and completely delightful to watch. I have a full-time bookkeeping position now, a small CPA firm in Philadelphia, a 12-minute train ride from my new apartment. It's the apartment I moved into with the kids after the house. Smaller, quieter, mine. Derek completed an inpatient gambling treatment program in the spring after the divorce. He pays child support consistently now, which his attorney made very clear to him was non-negotiable in a way that trumped whatever his illness was making him want to do. He sees the kids every other weekend. It is not warm and it is not cold. It is managed. That's the best I can offer right now, and I've made my peace with that. There is grief in this story that I don't want to skip past. I grieved the marriage I thought I had. I grieved the version of Derek I fell in love with, who was real, who was funny and present, and who used to leave me notes on the bathroom mirror in dry erase marker when we were first together. That person existed. Whatever happened to him, the gambling, the shame spiral, the slow corruption of hiding and covering and lying, it didn't erase that he had once been someone I chose. That matters. Not as a reason to forgive everything or to excuse what he did, but as a fact of a real history that deserved better than the ending it got. I grieved for my kids, for the soccer games and recitals and school plays where they'd looked into the audience for their father and found his empty seat. Children keep accounts of these things in ways that take years to surface. I try to be honest with them without turning their father into a villain because they're going to have to build their own relationship with what he did, and I won't do that work for them. And I grieved in a small and private way for my own naivety. Not the dangerous kind. Not the kind I should have shed earlier. Just the ordinary human naivety of believing that the life I thought I was living was the life I was actually living. That particular loss doesn't fully heal. It just becomes familiar. But here's what I know now. Sitting at a kitchen table in an apartment that is fully mine, with the bills all in order and the accounts I understand, and the kids asleep in their rooms. The $500 my father sent every month from Kuwait was the most expensive kindness I've ever received. Not because of what it cost him, because of what it cost me to find out where it went. And the thing I hold on to, the thing that is not grief, not anger, not calculation, is the image of my dad in a barracks in the middle of the desert, sitting at a folding desk, setting up a wire transfer for the 5th or 10th or 20th month in a row, thinking about his grandkids, thinking about his daughter, deciding without announcement or fanfare to send half his paycheck across 10 time zones because he couldn't be there himself. That is also true. That is also part of this story. I called him last week from my kitchen while the pasta was boiling. No particular reason, just to talk. He picked up on the second ring. He always picks up on the second ring. How are the kids? He asked. Good, I said. Lily's into horses now. Mason won't stop talking about some Lego set. The big Star Wars one? What else? He laughed. That full chest laugh. Some things at least hold.